An introduction to SAP BW for HANA. My name is Marcos Foles, and I'm a commerce consultant with over 20 years of experience on implementing different SAP solutions on large organizations across the Americas and Europe. I'm pleased to be here today to deliver this webinar to you on understanding your business with reporting and analytics on SAP BW for HANA. Comerit is a global management consulting firm and a market-leading advisor on SAP HANA, SAP Business Objects, and Business Intelligence Solutions. Comerit was the first partner to be certified by SAP in delivering SAP BW powered by HANA solutions. Comerit's experience on multiple SAP HANA engagements gives us an advantage when considering business suite on HANA, S4HANA, and other potential technology decisions that you may have. You may see here the most recent publications authored by Comerit team members, and this webinar in particular will discuss some of the features covered on the SAP BW for HANA, an introduction book in detail. SAP, and that book is available on SAP Press website. The agenda for this webinar covers two parts: data acquisition and reporting and analytics. Data acquisition. Data acquisition is a process of extraction of data from the source systems, transformation of that data and harmonizing to a common format and a common language, and storing that data into your SAP BW for HANA data warehouse. SAP BW for HANA then can become your central repository for analysis and reporting, and also the source of harmonized data to make available for being consumed by other systems on your organization for the processing. SAP BW for HANA brings innovations to simplify this ETL process from different source systems. These include the use of native SAP HANA remote connections capabilities that will expand the spectrum of source system types that can be directly connected to SAP BW for HANA. Among those, we have different connection frameworks. The first one is a big data framework, which allows you to connect to big data systems such as Hadoop. File-based framework, which allows you to bring data from flat files as well as Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, for example. We can also have SAP HANA Framework, which allows you the integration of bringing data from tables that are physically stored in the local or tenant database installation where SAP BW for HANA resides, and also bringing data from virtual tables that were enabled on SAP HANA through Smart Data Access process. Smart Data Access process is also discussed in detail on the SAP BW for HANA an introduction book. Operational data provisioning is another framework that's available for integrating SAP BW for HANA to your SAP source systems, such as we have SAP BW type source systems such as CRM, APO, and other BW systems. We can also bring data using SAP extractors that are available on SAP ECC, Suite on HANA, or S4HANA. We can also use the new features that are available on SAP HANA, such as ABAP Core Data Services, views, which are HANA development that integrates tables and views available on HANA to the application layer platform, and the processing is pushed down to the HANA database. We can also integrate SAP BW for HANA on other contexts, such as web services source systems using HTML protocol, such as you want to bring in exchange rates from Bloomberg. That's one example. Operational data provisioning sources have some limitations that are described on the two SAP notes noted here in this box. And one is for SAP S/4HANA limitations, and the other is for ECC data sources limitations, including custom data sources that you might create for your to publish data available on your ECC systems or S/4HANA systems that requires you to develop your custom data store and to make it available for operational data provisioning framework. You have to run the steps described on this note as well. Once you have connected your source systems, you can start mapping how are the flow of this data from the source systems to the target objects that will store that data transformed and harmonized for your reporting. The data flows on SAP BW for HANA are graphical elements that help you visualize the connection among different info providers and the flow of data that comes from the source system to the final info provider available for reporting. The innovation that we have here in SAP BW for HANA is that on this editor for the data flows, you can see not only the transformations that are associated with the source and target providers, but also you can see the data transfer process that are created for those providers. Let's talk about the transformations that you can create between one info provider and another, and also from the source system to the first info provider that the data will be stored. That transformation is where you define the rules for harmonization, and depends on the source, and these rules for the transformations are especially defined depending on your source of the data and the target which is receiving that data. These rules that you may define may be complex rules, may be simple rules, but depending on them, you can execute those rules either on the HANA database, or those rules are so complex that that the execution cannot be pushed down to the HANA database, but they are performed on the ABAP application layer as on the previous SAP BW systems, where the data is not processed on the database layer, but on the application layer. However, you may have an option then, if you create simple transformations, that you can process those transformations on either the application layer or on the database layer. Our recommendation, however, is always to push down to the processing to the database layer as much as possible, and that's why SAP also introduced to the BW transformations the use of ABAP managed database procedures, which is the new way of ABAP development on the HANA platform. That ABAP management database procedures are developed as methods on ABAP, and once you activate those methods, it creates on the backend a stored procedure that will be executed in HANA to process the data that is described on the method that you have done your development. So the new ABAP method for HANA development is using HANA SQL script. As you can see, each functional method or program using ABAP managed database procedure has an associated stored procedure for the runtime execution. And those programs can only be created or changed using the ABAP development tools add-on on the SAP HANA Studio or on your Eclipse platform. Once you have defined all the transformations and the rules for harmonization, you can define also how the data is transferred from the source system and stored to your target. How frequent is this data transfer happening? And these settings and schedules are defined on the data load process, which on SAP BW for HANA, it replaces the info package that existed in previous versions of SAP BW. Therefore, in SAP BW for HANA, we don't have anymore the info package, and also we don't have anymore the persistent staging layer with area, which is called PSA for our developers that are used to develop in the SAP BW for quite some time. So this is one innovation that SAP BW for HANA brings on the data acquisition. And the data transfer process also managed the delta initialization and also the delta's loads that may happen after the delta initialization pointer is created. So as you can see, we have load methods that are full load or delta load. Full load brings a snapshot of the existing data at this point in time, the point in time of the load from the source system, and replaces it on your target object in SAP BW for HANA. The delta load, however, it's starting a certain point and then bringing just the data that was changed or created or deleted on a certain time in your source system, and then bringing to SAP BW for HANA just the records that were updated and not the full set of data available on your source system. However, for this flow that we see on the screen with multiple data targets, we have to create a sequence of loading, and then which is the first load, we first load the first data target with some transformations there, and then the data, and then in this example, the data will be transformed again for a second data target for some other requirements that were necessary. And the sequence of loading is defined by the process chains. So the process chains define the data load sequence execution steps and controls via different process or events. Process chain can be scheduled at a certain date and time, called from another process chain, or set to be in steady mode, which is constantly listening the source system for new data that may become available. Also, we can have manual data acquisition to SAP BW for HANA. For example, when we have master data objects which stores attributes, texts, and also hierarchies, they can manually be created in SAP BW for HANA. Now that we have the data brought from the source systems harmonized to a common language, we can make the data available to other systems on the downstream for further processing. And the way to expose this data through the source systems is using the SAP BW for HANA is using open hubs. So open hubs are objects that makes the data available to source systems, and you can create other transformations that are required for the source systems to interpret that data more precisely. So the destination types can be a table in a database, in the HANA database, a flat file, and also you can connect directly to a third-party tool that allows connections from SAP BW for HANA, and then send the data directly to that system. The source types of information that you can use in an open hub in SAP BW for HANA is a data source from the source system. You can use an info provider, like we have in our example, a composite provider be used to move data to an open hub, as you can see here. And then we have one transformation that has some harmonization process from this composite provider to the open hub, and one data transfer process that is used to schedule the data to be read from the composite provider and saved on the open hub, I would say in this example, using a flat file. As you can see here, a flat file defined on the server here that will be created there for further processing. You can also use an info source or an info object as a source of data for the Open Hub. Now I'd like to go through a quick demo for these data acquisition capabilities so that you can have a feel of how it's working a little bit with SAP BW for HANA. So for that, I will share my screen here. And so I think I believe my screen is sharing now. And I'm going to my SAP HANA Studio, where I have installed already my BW modeling perspective and connected to my BW for HANA system. And I can see here under my connection, that's with my BW for HANA system, my favorites node, which is an innovation of this tool. We can see here the BW repository. If I open here the BW repository, I see all the info areas, which contains info objects and info providers for the BW for HANA modeling. This area here in the old BW systems is the transaction RSA1, and in the transaction RSA1 in SAP BW for HANA, we don't have anymore the ability of doing modeling over there. All the modeling is happening here in the SAP BW for HANA. We can create here data sources, and here are the protocols that we discussed, the framework that we discussed for creating the data sources. And I would like to show you the SAP extractors data sources that we have created here. So we can see that we have the same structures as we are used to see in a SAP BW environment with our connections, and then we have our data sources here that were created for this webinar together with other ones. So I have here one data source that is a custom data source that was created in the source system. We know that's a custom data source because it starts with the letter Z or a letter Y. And if we double click on the data source, it will be opened on the Eclipse here. And so it opens on the Eclipse window. And then you can see the details of the data source. what are the extraction methods that will be used for this data source. So here you can see that's a delta extraction, and I can also create a hybrid provider to have direct access to the data on the source system. Also, I can have here a streaming process that can be used so that SAP BW for HANA can be constantly listening for changes that happen in the source system and bringing only those changes to SAP BW. So we have the fields here that are defined. We can define a key for the field that we have here. And going to the left side here, we can see for each field what are the properties that are used on that field, and all the different settings that we can make for them. So this is the data source that are responsible for bringing a subset of the data available on your source systems. You can have data source to bring in sales data, another data source to bring in purchasing data, another data source for bringing finance data, one data source for bringing one specific table that exists in the source system, but we don't have a standard SAP data source available to bring the data from that table. So all those data sources can be created in your source system and make it available here on your SAP BW for HANA. So if I open my favorites here, I can see my data flow that I created for this webinar, which has all the data that is used on this webinar. So you have our source system here. We have different data sources that are used, the targets that are used to store the data. So here we have a master data target type, and here we have a transactional data target types here. One target type is using streaming, the other target type is using scheduling for data loading, and we have here a composite provider, which is a virtual object that collects the data and group the data for reporting. And I am using also this composite provider to send the data further down as an open hub to a target system. So I told you that you can access the data transfer process from this data flow. You right click on this object, and then you have all the options that you can navigate from this data store, and then you can access your data transfer process and your transformations. However, transformation and data transfer process are not yet in the Eclipse-based editor, so SAP provides an integration between your Eclipse editor or HANA Studio through the SAP GUI old interface, so that you can use as a normal SAP BW screen that normally the SAP BW developers are used to it. If you are a new SAP BW developer and wants to learn how SAP BW for HANA works, so here is how it's working. So you have your Eclipse, and then you have this screen with a different format for configuration of your, in this case, data transfer process, which you have here my data process, how I am updating which are my targets that are being used, and how I can execute this data transfer process. I can execute the load manually by clicking on this button, execute, or I can use it in a process chain. And to access the process chain, I have this button here called process chain maintenance, and I can navigate to my process chain editor, which I have here in my screen. And once I see here, I have my data transfer process, which is sign here that says that it's listening constantly for changes that happen in the source system. And I can see by this button here that the streaming is active. Sorry. So let's take a look on how do I know that the streaming is happening. So if I go in my log, I see that the processing is executed, and I see my last process here is called recent, and it's constantly listening. So if I go here in my monitor for Queue Task Manager, and I click there, it will open me a screen with the process that ran uh, in a in a window that is defined for the process change to keep the logs on, and then you can see that here in this time here this process was happening, and I have here the results. So the difference between the streaming process chain and the not streaming process chain now is that if you schedule this process chain here, for instance, the streaming here is being executed every minute. So every minute I'm going to my, this process chain is being executed and going to the source system and bringing the data back, for example. If I have a normal schedule, what's happening is that the target here will be piling up the requests of each load that's being processed from the source system. So every minute I go there in the source system, bring data and store here and try to store here in this target. However, even if the data, even if I don't have any changes happened in the source system, the requests are here and saved in this data store object. However, with the streaming, only when the request has records changed in the source system, it saves a new request on the target. It doesn't piling up requested with 0 records. So if I go and manage this data store and then I see the request that I have there, I can see that in my source system, the last change that happened in the source system was happening in October 10th. And so far, no change happening there, but my process chain is constantly listening the request, the changes that happen in the source system. But I'm not piling up 0 records as I was used to do in a non-streaming process chain. Okay. So this is the data flow process that we can have in SAP BW for HANA that covers the data acquisition process from the source system to the target objects and make the data available on your SAP BW for HANA system, either for reporting or for being consumed by other systems. So let's go back to the presentation, and I would like to go back to the presentation. Clicking in here. Okay, got it. So let me go back to the presentation and going to the second part of our webinar. And I think I answered the questions that I received. That is, if SAP BW for HANA can integrate with ABAP CDS views. It's a normal question that we have, and then yes. So you can see we have an adapter for ABAP CDS views. Also, the question that we received is in when a company has the S/4HANA, and S/4HANA, as we know, has an embedded analytics component on it, which is a lighter version of SAP BW 7.5. What is the use case for having an SAP BW for HANA together with S/4HANA system? So the answer for that is that you want to separate heavy process of analysis that may be happening on a BW system to not impact your transactional system that receives sales orders, purchase orders, finance documents creating, payment processing, and may have HR payroll processing being running. Those cannot be impacted by a large reporting processing that should happen in a BW system. So it's a way that you can, by splitting this processing in transactional data to be processed by S/4HANA and analytics processing being processed by SAP BW4HANA is a way that you mitigate the risk of impacting the performance of your transactions in your system, S/4HANA system, and also your transactions doesn't impact the performance of your analytical reporting, which is heavy processing, as I would say. Right, so that's one reason of splitting and using and implementing SAP BW for HANA and SAP S/4HANA system, and integrate them in such a way that you can benefit from the HANA capabilities on both sides. So let's cover the second part of our webinar, which is reporting and analytics. Reporting and analytics, you can integrate SAP BW for HANA into different front-end tools that can provide you specific visualization resources for your analytics requirements. For instance, if you'd like to analyze how your sales are performing on a certain period of time, and then you have on your HANA database a process for predictive analysis, and then that you can create different scenarios for the future of your data. You can have those different scenarios in different views ready available on your HANA database and to be consumed by your BW for HANA system. And then using SAP Lumira, for instance, and creating a story for your data based on what's currently happening today on your sales according to your territories, and then what is the future if I'm adapting my business, changing certain features or certain process in this way, and see how it's impacted. Now, if I change in another way, how it's impacted, and so on and so forth. So you can create a story of your data, and then you can tell this story and see which are the best option for your uh, business and to improve the performance of it, right? And then for integrating with different tools, you have different interfaces available on SAP BW. For HANA, as we had different interfaces for bringing data from the source systems. So one interface is called multidimensional expressions, MDX. It's a interface that can use the data available on your SAP BW for HANA in a multidimensional form and then send it to your front end that's capable of interpreting that multidimensional format and give you a visualization of that. For instance, that you can include on that visualization hierarchies. So you can navigate and drill down your analysis using hierarchies, for instance. The second protocol that we have is a lightweight consumption by OData. So OData is a protocol that uses the RESTful way of sending data from one system to another. And then it has some limitations because it doesn't send to the front end hierarchies for example. So you it, it's a lightweight consumption. So it's more used for mobile applications where you can have dashboards running on your phone or on your tablet that just require a number or just require a set of numbers that will give you on a tile of your dashboard the growth of the data, how is the data today according to some settings so that you can have a gauge that says that okay, right now you are on the red flag for their data, but as you can see here, the sales are increasing for this territory. And then another territory is on the green side, but the sales are decreasing for some reason. And then you can, by looking the changing of them, you can fast respond to that changes and perhaps act and revert the scenarios if the scenario is not good for you. The third option that we have here is we can have systems that can connect to HANA database using relational connection, which means that you can have your BW objects exported as a HANA view on your HANA database where SAP BW for HANA resides, and then use that HANA views to send the data to the front end, such as Tableau, for instance, that doesn't access the BW application directly, but you can access HANA directly, and you can have your HANA view as a method for exporting to Tableau your BW objects. The other option that we have is SAP HANA Online Connection. The SAP HANA Online Connection differs from the SAP HANA Connection that's available on SAP Business Objects. SAP Business Objects, for instance, Web Intelligence, you can have part of the processing of the data being executed in the business object server and part of the processing of the data being executed on the HANA server. And when we have that scenario, the data is transferred, the data that was partially processed on the HANA side is transferred and stored as sort of, in my words, a microcube on the web server, and then that data will be used for drill down and further processing that are and further calculations that might be defined on your report on the web intelligence report on the business objects. However, the SAP HANA online connection doesn't have that microcube on the website. It connects directly on the HANA database, and all the calculations are pushed down to HANA database. And because of that, we have some limitations on what are the calculations that can be executed on your report and pushed down to the HANA database. And that those restrictions are also described on the SAP Business Objects manual or guides when we are implementing the SAP HANA online connection. Now that we talked about different types of connections uh, for the front ends, so let's see which are the front end options that you may integrate with SAP BW for HANA. As you can see, we have a large scope of front-end options, so I'll list some of them here, like SAP tools such as SAP Fiori, SAP Business Objects, and Lumira. Third-party tools such as Microsoft, Excel, and for instance, Excel and Quillic. Also, you can visualize your data and do some data preview with some analysis of it using our SAP HANA Studio or Eclipse modeling tools, and where you have your query editor integrated with the data preview for the query. Also, for your reporting, you can leverage a native integration between SAP BW for HANA and SAP HANA by doing cross-modeling of BW objects with HANA views, and also you can leverage then AFL library with predictive analysis tools and flows that can be created so that you can integrate those results of the predictive analysis to your current values that you have on your SAP BW for HANA that are your facts, and then build an analysis report with your past, your present, and different future options according to different rules that you may apply, and then that will fast track your decisions and how direct the course of your business. So now, for integrating the BW for HANA objects that are decomposed providers, advanced DSOs, and so on, we have queries. And the queries in SAP BW for HANA are the same as the Business Explorer queries in the old BW systems, commonly called SAP BEX queries. So SAP BW for HANA queries are developed in Eclipse-based editor within the BW modeling tools for HANA. Business Explorer query editor cannot be used for display or editing SAP BW for HANA queries, but you can still use the transaction RSRT to execute and evaluate your SAP BW for HANA query if it is necessary. You can also generate an external HANA calculation view based on your query, and any change that you make on your query structure, it updates directly your SAP HANA view, and then your front-end tools that are connected to that HANA view are automatically updated with the new structure or new fixes that you have made on your query for fixing some data that they require. And also we have the query data preview on the same window as the query designer. That's a new feature that helps the developer developing the queries on SAP BW for HANA, because we don't need anymore to create our query, save, and then go to another tool to see the data if the data is okay. So we can see live when I make the change, I can save my query, and then I can click on the button data preview, and then I can see the data right here being executed on the SAP BW for HANA. The same way as we have the SAP BW systems, we have variables that are associated to info objects, and every info provider has that info object included. All the queries that are created can access that variable, right? Those variables can be simple rules that you define to fill the variables with values. You can create a range of date. You can create single dates for the variables. You may have a need for complex rules, such as get the last month of the last year up to the date that the report is running. So for that, you may have an SAP exit by exit SAP with common rules and requirements, such as date of the report is running -1, -2, the last month, the last day of. And if SAP exits are not available for you, you can create your custom exits to your own logic that will be processed on the ABAP layer on your processing. But also on SAP BW for HANA, you can create SAP HANA exits that are developed on ABAP managed database procedures, and they are pushed down the execution to the HANA database. They are not executed on the ABAP application, which will fast track the execution of your query. As you can see, another views from the editor, you can see that all the variables and structures used on your query can be easily visualized in this editor here, and also properties of the query are all combined in one screen. So we have runtime properties, all the runtime properties are available on the same screen, and all the general properties of the query also available on the same screen, which before we had to go to different screens to access these different properties that in here all together in one screen. So this is an innovation on SAP BW for HANA that will fast track your development. Now, once you have created a DAX query, that you may have a requirement for a less granular report, which you can create a BW for HANA query for it. But also you have a more detailed requirement, but both of them are based on the same data set or the same composite provider, so that you can have one query, a less granular view of the data, and with more granular view of the data according to your requirement. And those queries can be used and integrated with different contents. For instance, here we have our central query or view created in SAP BW for HANA and consumed by one front end, that this one is called Quick View, and the data was sent to this front end using the OData methods. Also, we have another view of the data with geospace feature that is presented on the SAP Business Object web front end. And here we are using SAP HANA Connection. So also we have a requirement to create a story about the data, and then we can use SAP Lumira, and SAP Lumira receives the data from SAP HANA using MDX protocol, so that we can use hierarchies, for instance, to navigate through the structure, to navigate the analysis on the report, and then help us create the story of the data. Also, we can send the data to Microsoft Excel for a spreadsheet that we are integrated with another calculations and created for our analysis. And that for this example here, we use OLEDB to connect it to BW for HANA and have the data available on the Excel here. So all these different tools you can use to give you a different flavor of analysis on the same data set that you have available on SAP BW for HANA. So let's go for a quick demo so that you can see these connections here in live. And then I would like to share my screen here quickly. And I am connecting to my SAP business objects which I have developed two web queries here. Let's get the first one. That's some sales summary by country, and that one I am using SAP HANA Connection, and I can show on the design side here that the data access, when you go to the data access for the report, you can see here the data providers, and then I can edit the local query defined on the data here that will be data from the SAP BW for HANA and store that on the web server. And as you can see here, if I am on the reading side and I get a refresh of the data, it will pop up the selection screen for that data, and I am retrieving it, and the map will be updated. Then we can see here where we have which country here we have data that we have sales coming from our company, right? So this is the SAP HANA connection. Now I have another view here called market analysis that uses the same query on the SAP HANA, but now I am using a different type here. I am using SAP HANA online connection, and then I can go to data access. I don't have anymore the query here because my data my query, my data here is the proper query that I am using. I am connecting these reports to the query directly in SAP BW for HANA. So I can see here the option for disconnect from SAP HANA, and another option here that I can limit the size of the result set to certain amount of rows and execution time as well, because it's a live connection. And since it's a live connection, and even though I am in design mode, I can change some some controls on the design mode here, which if I do that on the other connection, it requires a refresh. But if I change here, even though I'm in the design mode, I am changing here the data that is displayed in the design mode as well. So that helps also the developer, but has some restrictions on what are the type of data that you can use as a visualization. So here you can see some tiles here with sales in different countries, and here's the top sales orders. Depends on the country that I want to analyze. I would say I want to see Canada here. What's happened in Canada? And then I see here Canada has 400 only, right? So so this is one way of integrating the front end, and I would like to show you now which is the backquery that are used for it. And my backquery is associated with a composite provider. And once I'm here in my business BW modeling perspective, I can go down and then see all the queries that are linked to this composite provider, which I couldn't see in the old BW systems in the transactional SA1. And this is an innovation that SAP BW for HANA brings and then gives to you for fast track your development and finding the objects. Here it's easier this way. So here you can see that here is the query that is used on those two reports that I showed to you. And then here we have the external SAP HANA view that the SAP HANA view will be used for SAP HANA online connection and also for the OData connection that you may have the need for connecting with that protocol. So SAP external HANA view. And then we can define filters, as you see, the fields and the variables here. So we can see the variables. We can right click in the editor for the variable. Then you can see here how the variable is created, which are the default values if you have it, which are the dependencies. So we don't have dependencies on this variable. If it is a global variable, you will see all the objects there. Now we can go to section where you see the rows and the three characteristics that are not displayed on the first view of the report. We can bring it for drill down. You have your columns, formulas, and also the key figures that you can report, the conditions that you can create, like top 5 sales orders that are only available on the MDX protocol, are not available on the SAP HANA. So even though you have here SAP HANA view ignores it, and then the entire data set you have to filter on the front end. You have the exceptions here. You have here's your dependencies. So here's my query with all the variables that are used in this query. My runtime properties, as you saw on the presentation. And then if I want to do a data preview, I can click on my data preview button here, and it shows down here on the screen the selection query. And once I selection, it's running, and it gives me the data that I need. I can move the columns for bring the data to a more higher level, as I was used to do in the Explorer Analyzer. So this works like the Business Explorer Analyzer that you are used to see, and then you have here your query, your query information that you hear the same way as we had before. So this is the query on the SAP BW for HANA, and I would like to go back to the presentation at this moment and finalize with the questions that you may have. And we also will be on the BI and HANA 2018 convention in Las Vegas on February 26th to March 1st, where Command will be there and also will be there presenting other topics. I'll be there presenting a topic for best practice of using BW for HANA, and you are free to go and just there. I'll be excited to see you there at the BI and HANA 2018 event, SAP event, uh, in collaboration of SAP Insider and SAP. So it was a pleasure to deliver this webinar to you today, and I hope that this webinar could show you a little bit more about SAP BW for HANA capabilities and how to integrate with different front-end tools to help you with your understanding of your analysis, with your understanding and analysis of your business process. And I hope you can see, and as well, you can see further details on this on the SAP BW for HANA an introduction book that is available on the SAP Press. Feel free to reach us out at here's my email, and also the presentation will be available to you at www.commerce.com. So thank you very much for your time, your attendance, and I hope this presentation bring you a little bit more knowledge on SAP BW for HANA, and I hope to see you soon. Goodbye.